Hey there and welcome. My name is Carlos Berlitz, and in this video we are going to talk about the latest scenario for the Black Void RPG system that is called Dark Dealings in the Shaded Souq. I may have butchered the title, but let's get to it. It calls itself a dark esoteric game, and this is not a review on the system itself, it's the review on the latest scenario. But just to put yourself on how the scenario looks like, for me, particularly, it calls a little bit on the Middle East and Arabic culture, mostly because of the aesthetic, like how people are dressed and how the architecture looked like. But it takes a lot from the other culture and it adds a lot on it. So it doesn't just take stuff from the culture and use the stereotypical way to portray it. It brings a lot of different stuff so that it doesn't look like a cheap, blunt attack on it. And another thing that it's important to note from now on is that the DM or GM is called an arbiter. So this is the term that I will be using on the next part of the video. About how the book is portrayed, the art is amazing. You probably have some art here, and you have almost one art per page, or in some pages even more than one, but in average more than one art per page. And on top of that, you have a very rich layout, which I think that helps a lot in understanding the scenario and being able to read all of it. However, I have one idea that was not productive, because I think that it was, the font is very small. And with that, you mean that you get tired of reading it when you try to read it all at once. So, although the density is not that much because you have a good spacing between them, you have a lot of text in the same page, and you get tired of reading all these small texts at once. So this is my personal idea. It's based on a district that is called Camellia, and supposedly you are already introduced to it on the core rule book, but this book, this scenario provides you with much more details, like known NPCs, organizations, district. It's already district, but regions and factions and such. And for me, the particular point that I liked, that I enjoyed a lot, was the district inhabitants, because it helped fleshing out the idea of how the district itself looks like in my mind. And so how is the aesthetic and how to portray it to the other players. And another thing is how you are brought to this district. You have a hook that for me is very compelling. That is, you are wronged and you are framed for a crime that you haven't committed. It's supposed to be one or two of the PCs, but you can easily in some way drag all of them. So then you are introduced to this district with a compelling hook and with a rich description of the district itself. So it's a very easy way to get yourself inside of the adventure. It develops in 7 scenes, in which each one of them have at least one encounter. And I think that it's fitting because it's not a linear adventure, and it feels very organic to have this kind of division in 7 scenes. Because in this way, you will then have the players to determine how they will follow each one of the leads. Because this is not a linear path. You are being framed, and then you have a lot of leads to where to follow and what are you going to investigate first. And then the players will choose where they will go and which leads they may miss because they chose to follow another one. For me, this feels very organic and very believable. So you don't have to lift that suspension of disbelief a lot. And another thing is that then you don't need to follow each one of the scenes in an order. It's not like you have the room A and following the room B and so on. You have 7 scenes. Some of them need to be in a certain way enchained, or some of them will happen after another one, but you don't need to follow that strict rule. And for me, this is a really good way that was also explored in Whispers in the Dark, that I put a link in here in another video, because this way you have some kind of intrigue, and sometimes the players will feel motivated to try to get the most of each one of the scenes, and not that you as the DM or arbiter is just pushing them to the next encounter and then everything is sorted out. Another thing that is very important in an intrigue scenario is that each one of the encounters do not need to evolve to combat. You don't need to resort to violence to sort them out. And this is gold for me when you are talking about intrigue and investigation. You don't always look for combat. You look for resolution. But if they end up resorting to combat and violence, one thing that I really love from this scenario and the system description is they have a kind of description that is called possible partakers, when they describe how and which of the people outside may join the fight. And this makes it really organic. It really makes the scenario come alive, because the arbiter will roll the die, they will see which number it gets, and then they compare with the table, and then they will know, will the peasants join? Will there be anyone from a particular group from your side or the other on this fight? Or how the battle itself will evolve after a certain number of rounds. And this makes the scenario look alive and not just something that you just compare with a random table and that's it. So my point here is not to spoil the story or the adventure for anyone, so I won't dive a lot into it. I would just say that I really appreciated reading it. I got some surprises from reading it, even though I haven't DM'd it and I haven't played on it. I am curious to try and play it with some players that I know, but the main thing is that this scenario of intrigue and investigation was really compelling. It provided a good plot hook, a good ambientation. You are really alive inside the scenario. You do not feel that it was forced. And as I mentioned, I was surprised with how some things turned out. And really, I see it as a new and exciting system and a new and exciting adventure that gets together a lot of the ideas from the Black Void RPG game and put it inside the scenario, the adventure. So it's really an epitome of the idea that they brought in, that for me are very compelling. And I hope that for you enjoy it as well. I will put the link in the description for you to check it out. And if you like the video, like the damn video, share, subscribe, you know how internet works, comment if you tried already the adventure, if you haven't tried it. I have also a coffee that is linked in the description, that if you like the videos, you can pay me a coffee or something. And I will see all you guys on the next video, and see ya!